Hello and welcome to today's webinar about the CA Experts workflow system. My name is Daniel Dolinsky and I'm the lead business process architect with CA Experts. This webinar will take about 20 minutes, so 15 minutes for the demo and 5 minutes for questions and answers. So there's this question area in the GoToWebinar tool. Feel free to ask questions at any time and I try to answer them at the end of the presentation. So this webinar is about the workflow system. Workflow system was already presented in autumn last year. So from a technical point of view, this demo will be the same as in autumn, but now the workflow system got integrated into our web services. So it looks a little bit different, and I would also like to show you how it got integrated there. So as I said, the live demo will take about 15 minutes, and then we have the questions and answer session for about 5 minutes. So the workflow system is a tool that allows us to store the state of UniversalPlantViewer tree items in a database. So if you have worked with UniversalPlantViewer before, you know that we have a tree there where you can have your physical items, sketches, drawings, comments, and so on, that you would usually work on when you use UniversalPlantViewer. And using the workflow system, you can store the state of these items back onto a web server, and it's creating a history for these items, so it's easy to create punch lists, workflows, and so on, even by adding metadata to these items. The workflow system got integrated into the UPV web services, which means it's bundled with a browser-based viewing. So you would usually just set up the web services on your server, and you've got the browser-based viewing, which is the viewing possibility for UniversalPlantViewer in a web session, combined with the workflow system. We had a other webinar about the web services a couple of days ago, so please visit this YouTube video if you haven't seen this other session, because here we talk about the browser-based viewing and how this integrates into the web service. Now let's go to the live demo. As I said, everything is running on a web service, so we can just log in onto our server, and then on the server we usually see the planned activities for the person that is logged in. So I've logged in with this dummy account here, and I get 2 items that are listed here. We are really free about the types of columns we have here, so that's completely configurable. So you can use this, for example, for punch lists, where you would have other columns in here. So this is more a list of items that were done in the tool and that should be handled by other colleagues. So here we see, for example, the area, attached PNIDs, discipline, and so on. Now, from a worker perspective, I would just open up a ticket by clicking here, and then I see the ticket information. We have 5 items here that are always fixed, so we have to have a name for the ticket. Then it has to be attached to a plant or project of a UniversalPlantViewer. Then the ticket has to be assigned to a specific email address. A workflow type has to be set, but the drop-down list here is freely configurable. So it could be your workflow types, so there are no restrictions what workflow types would be available. And then we could have other stakeholders, other email addresses, who should also be informed about changes of this ticket. Then down here in this area called properties, we have 6 items. And these 6 items, they are completely user configurable. So you can have drop-down boxes, you can have dates, text areas, and so on. So I can show you afterwards the configuration of these properties. So it's quite easy for the admin. It's just needed to be done once, and then you have these drop-down boxes here. So you're completely free. You can have additional dates, whatever you like in this area. Then we have a comment area, and down here is the history of the item. So we can see a screenshot here. So that happened in the past, and if I modify the ticket, it will add to this history, so I can jump back and forth also in the history if it's necessary to compare states of these items there. Now let's see how this looks like in the 3D model. So I just need to press the Show 3D Model button, and then it's opening up the model, including this ticket here in the Test 01 area. So this is a live view, so we are really here in the Universal Plant Viewer. It's getting embedded here using the browser-based viewing, so I can use all the functionality of Universal Plant Viewer in here. And when I modify the items in this special folder, which is specifically for the Universal Plant Viewer workflow system, then these items in here get synchronized with the database. So I can open up this one here, and as you can see, it's this item that got stored. So it's just a screenshot. I can modify this. So I can go here and, for example, can put a markup on top of the screenshot. So I modify this a little bit. So perhaps I want to like to emphasize this area here by the markup. And when I press the Save button, then as you can see, the stars are getting changed and it's getting synchronized back to our system. So that's working in both ways. And so it's getting stored in the UPV. Let's go back to the workflows. So as you can see, I can keep this window open over here. So I don't have to close this. So I can work with the list and the viewer open, and I can even put this window on an extra area here, which I can move around. Unfortunately, I can only share one screen, so the usual workflow would be to place this on another screen. So I would place this on my left screen or right screen and work with the list and the items on the other screen. So I have a full screen Universal Plant Viewer window on one screen here of my two-screen desktop. Regarding this list, you have all the filter functions that you would usually expect. So as you can see, I can use filtering for the workflow type and the status area and so on. And of course, you can also input data here. So if I use this here, I can, for example, filter for test. And then I just get this item over here. So it's a little bit like the filtering options you usually have in Excel. And you can also extract the list to Excel using this button here. So this one allows you to store all the data from the list onto your hard drive. You can also save and load the grid state. So if you have nice filter settings here that show you the items you want to, for example, handle today, you could save the grid state and load it from your drive. You can clear the filter and reset the settings in here. And you can also use predefined views. So for example, here I had selected the My Planned Activities, but you could also go for all planned activities or all ongoing activities and so on. And the views are also completely configurable. So this area and the ticket area, that's what the usual user sees. If you've got admin rights here in the web services, you will see a lot of extra items in here. So let's go through this administration area. And I think you will see what's going on in the background and how this can be configured. So here in the administration area, we have the possibility to add Universal Plant Viewer models to the workflow system. So we just need to have the path to the Universal Plant Viewer model. And the admin can add additional plants just by adding them using create new plant. Then in code lists, you can define the codes that are available for the drop-down boxes. So for example, if I look into the status code list, you see we have the new, in work, ready for approval, and so on items in here, and they get these entry IDs, so you can use the status code list for your forms. Same here, for example, for task, or area, discipline, and so on. So that's completely free and up to your admin how you want to use this. So you could delete all the code lists, create new ones. Then we've got the views. So that's the drop-down box on the list where I can select filter settings. So the filter setting here is an OData expression. So OData is the standardized language for these settings. So usually your admin would know how you could use them. So just a standard OData expression saved under a certain name, and then this is available in the drop-down box. Then over here we've got the templates. So the templates that are really templates for the forms that we are using. So each workflow item that is available gets a specific form. So for example, for the rework form, we would have an XML in here like this. I know it's a little bit technical, but I think it's also easy to understand for the admin. So basically you create a template with certain fields. Then here we've got a field called status, which takes the values from a code list, and it's using the code list number 1. And for the translation, we are using this code here. So you can define codes like this and then translate them to any language you like. So I will show you how to switch the language in a minute. Then you can define if the field is required, and that's the default code list value for this list. So that would pick the status code list, show all the values when you do the drop down, and the value where the code list number 1 would be the pre-selected one. Then, for example, here for the due date, it's just a key called due date, and the type of the field would be date. So here you get this date picker when you press the field. So very easy to configure. So I think usually the admin can set up these forms within half an hour or so for all the forms that would be needed for your project. So here we've got the forms. Then you have the code lists on the forms. And basically that's the administration work regarding the graphical user interface. Of course, we also have an administration area here for users, user groups, permissions, and so on. So you can have very specific settings for which areas can be used and how the people could react with the graphical user interface here. As I said, usually the standard user will just get the list and the items and wouldn't see all these administration items over here. Now we are nearing the end of the presentation. I showed you that you have these name tags in the form definitions. So as soon as you specify them, there's a little Excel table where you can translate these internal names to specific languages. So here we have a drop-down box, and you can add additional languages. So currently we support English, German, and Korean. So you can really change the graphical user interface by using this drop-down box. So you can have users from a lot of different countries using the tool at the same time. And it's just user specific how you switch the language in here. So that's it regarding the presentation of the tool. As I said, it's basically what you've seen in the fall presentation, but as you can see now, it got fully integrated into the web services. So for the other part with the browser, please have a look onto the video that is already available on YouTube, and you will get a recording of this session showing you the link to this YouTube video. So this is about the UPV browser inside the UPV web services.